What are you doing here? You can't just show up at my house like this, especially not with her. We just needed somewhere safe for the night, sir. She belongs here.
The rain slammed against the windshield like a warning, loud, sharp, relentless. And for a moment, James couldn't tell if it was the storm outside or the storm inside him that shook his breath. The taxi jolted to a sudden stop at the red light, the tires skidding just enough to make his heart jump. He gripped the steering wheel tight, knuckles pale against his deep skin, chest rising and falling in slow exhaustion. It was supposed to be his last ride of the night. One more trip, one more bill paid, one more chance to keep his world from falling apart. But life, as always, had other plans. He glanced in the rearview mirror to check if the backseat was clear. Just a habit, something he did without thinking. But what he saw made his entire body go still. A wallet. Not just any wallet. Thick, heavy, wrapped in dark leather with stitching. So clean it almost glowed under the dull streetlight. It wasn't the kind of wallet a man like James carried. It belonged to wealth. The kind of wealth you could feel before you even touched it. His throat tightened. He remembered the man who sat there just minutes ago, a businessman with sharp eyes and sharper words. The kind who talked down to people without raising his voice. Every command from him felt like a slap, even when he spoke calmly. James could still hear the tone, cold and dismissive, the kind that made you feel like nothing more than a shadow in your own life. And now his wallet was sitting right there, in James's taxi, alone, waiting. The rain beat harder. His heart beat louder. The power imbalance hung in the air, even though the man was gone. James looked at the wallet again, the weight of it pulling at his conscience. His mind whispered temptations he didn't want to hear. There was money inside. Probably a lot. Enough to cover his daughter's overdue school fees. Enough to buy groceries without checking his bank balance 3 times. Enough to breathe for once. But his spirit whispered something softer, something stubborn and old. You know better than that. He reached back slowly, hand trembling as if the wallet might bite him. And the moment his fingers wrapped around the leather, something unexpected happened. A voice, tiny, frightened, right behind him. "Mister, are you gonna help my daddy?" James jerked so hard he dropped the wallet. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. His breath caught in his throat as he turned around, confusion washing over him in slow, suffocating waves. A little girl sat curled up in the back seat, small, maybe 7, maybe 8. Curly hair flattened from sleep, eyes glistening with tears that hadn't fallen yet. She lifted the blanket around her shoulders like it was armor. His chest tightened. How long had she been there? How did he miss her? She looked scared, not of him but of the world, of being left behind, of being forgotten. "Sweetheart, how long have you been back there?" His voice came out softer than he felt. She sniffed, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Daddy was talking on the phone. He told me to sit and be quiet. I think he forgot me." The innocence in her words didn't just break the room. It broke something inside James too. He swallowed hard. He thought returning a wallet was the right thing. But now there was a child involved. A whole life. A whole story he didn't understand yet. And suddenly, the weight of the moment doubled. The girl looked at him again, one small hand clutching the blanket, the other reaching out toward the fallen wallet. "You're not mad, right? Daddy didn't mean it. He just gets busy." Busy. James had heard that word before. Busy was what people said when they didn't want to admit they didn't care in the ways they should. Busy was what people hid behind when they were too wrapped up in their own world to look at the one they created. He picked up the wallet, brushing off a few drops of rain that sneaked through the partially open window. The girl's eyes followed every movement, scared that he might do something bad with it, scared that she might get blamed. "I'm not mad," he whispered, his voice steady and warm. "And I'm not gonna leave you. I'm gonna get you home." She exhaled a breath she had been holding for what felt like a whole lifetime. Her small shoulders dropped, relief washing over her like a soft blanket. James started the engine, but before he drove off, he glanced back at her again. Something about her presence filled the taxi with a strange calm, like she carried a little piece of light in all that darkness. As he turned the cab around and headed toward the wealthy neighborhood the businessman had come from, James felt that old familiar tug in his chest. That mix of fear and duty, exhaustion and resolve. He kept one hand on the wheel and one eye on the road, but his thoughts stayed wrapped around the girl. He didn't know her name. He didn't know what kind of father could forget his own child in the back of a taxi. He didn't know what would happen when they reached the house. But he did know one thing: returning the wallet wasn't just about doing the right thing anymore. It was about this child, this voice, this moment life had placed in his hands. She leaned forward a little, small fingers brushing the back of his seat. "Mister, do you think Daddy will be mad at me?" The question stabbed him deeper than she intended. "Why would he be mad at you?" he asked. She stared out the window, watching the raindrops race each other down the glass. "Sometimes, when Mommy went away, Daddy gets mad at everything. Even when I don't do nothing." James didn't know what happened to the mother, but the way the girl said, "went away," made his heart ache. Kids never had the right words for grief. They only had the leftover feelings adults dropped on them. The road quieted as they entered the wealthier district, houses tall and shining under expensive lights. The taxi felt smaller there, swallowed whole by wide driveways and trimmed lawns. The girl looked up again. "Thank you for not leaving me," she whispered. "I was scared, but you feel safe." Something inside him cracked open. That one sentence, that one fragile voice calling him safe. No one had said that to him in a long time. Maybe ever. The rain softened. The storm quieted. And in that moment, James understood something deep. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't just a ride gone wrong. This was the beginning of a story he didn't ask for but was chosen for. A story he didn't know he needed. Because sometimes life doesn't knock. It climbs quietly into the backseat of your taxi. And the smallest voice in the darkest moment ends up changing your whole world. The mansion rose out of the darkness like it was built to remind people what they didn't have. Tall white pillars glowing under the driveway lights. Rainwater sliding down the steps like the house was too clean to even hold on to dirt. James pulled the taxi up to the iron gate and felt something heavy pressed down on his chest. The gate alone looked more expensive than his whole apartment. Thick black bars curling into elegant patterns, guarded by stone lions with cold, empty eyes. He swallowed, wiped his hand over the steering wheel, and tried to ignore how small his car looked in front of all that wealth. Beside him, Emma's small fingers were still wrapped around his sleeve. She hadn't let go the entire ride. Every time he turned, every time he slowed down, her grip tightened, like she was afraid that if she loosened even a little, he'd disappear like everybody else in her life seemed to do. Her eyes were wide as she took in the giant house behind the gate, the kind of place that should have felt like safety, but somehow looked more like a museum, beautiful, cold, and too quiet. "Is this your home?" he asked gently. She nodded, but even that nod felt unsure, like she wasn't answering about a house, but about who was waiting inside. James honked once, then again. The sound echoed against stone and glass, swallowed by the wind. He could feel his heart beating in his ears. This wasn't just about returning a wallet anymore. This was about bringing a little girl back to a man who didn't even notice she was gone. The gate buzzed, then creaked open slowly. No security guard. No questions. Just money and machines doing the talking. James drove up the long driveway, tires whispering over smooth, perfect stone. He parked near the front steps, turned off the engine, and sat for a moment in the silence that followed. The rain had eased into a drizzle, tapping lightly on the roof, like the sky itself was holding its breath. "Come on, sweetheart," he said softly. "Let's get you inside." Emma nodded again and unbuckled herself, but she didn't move until his door opened first. She slid out only when she heard his footsteps circle around the car, only when she could see him standing there, real and solid and not gone. She stepped close enough that her shoulder brushed his arm, close enough that he could feel her shaking. He didn't say anything about it. He just let her hold on. They walked together up the wide stone steps, each one feeling like a climb into another world. There were potted plants taller than James, lantern lights built into the walls, and a massive wooden door with a brass handle that looked like it weighed more than both of them combined. James took a breath, straightened his shoulders, and knocked. At first, nothing. Only the faint hum of the rain, the quiet drip of water off the roof. Then they heard footsteps, sharp, fast, coming closer. The door flung open so quickly the wind almost caught it. Mr. Harrison stood there, the same man from the back seat, only now without his polished mask. His suit jacket was gone, his tie loose around his neck, shirt sleeves rolled up, eyes wild like he'd been pacing for hours. His gaze landed on Emma first. His face twisted with something between panic and anger. "Emma?" His voice cracked, but instead of going soft, it hardened. Then he saw James, saw the way Emma was half hiding behind him. And just like that, anything human in his eyes shut down. His jaw clenched. His shoulders stiffened. "Why are you holding my daughter?" The words shot out like bullets. No hello, no thank you. No relief, just suspicion dripping from every syllable. Emma flinched at his tone and moved even closer to James, clutching his sleeve like it was the only thing keeping her upright. James felt the heat rise in his chest but kept his face calm, his voice level. "Sir, you left your wallet in my taxi, and your daughter fell asleep in the back. She was still there when you got out. I brought them both back." He held out the leather wallet, his hand steady even though everything inside him burned. Harrison's eyes dropped to the wallet, then snapped back to James. He didn't reach for it. He didn't even look at his daughter. He looked at James like he was something sticky on the bottom of his shoe. "So you expect me to believe," Harrison said slowly, each word dipped in ice, "that you just discovered a rich man's wallet and his child alone, and decided to bring them both back out of the goodness of your heart?" The way he said "rich man" made it clear what he saw when he looked at James, a poor black taxi driver at his doorstep, drenched in rain, out of place in this polished world. Emma tugged on her father's sleeve, voice trembling. "Daddy, he's telling the truth. I fell asleep. He was nice. Go inside, Emma," Harrison snapped, eyes never leaving James. "No." His tone made her shrink back. But she didn't move. Her fingers tightened instead. "No, Daddy, please listen." Harrison's hand cut through the air. "I said go inside." The thunder in his voice made James' jaw clench. The girl's eyes filled with fresh tears. James stepped in, careful, respectful, but firm. "Sir, I'm just returning what belongs to you. I could have kept the wallet. I didn't. I drove all the way back here. In the rain. On my own time." Harrison took one step forward, chest puffed slightly, using his height and his house and his money like weapons. "Or maybe you thought you'd get something else out of it," he hissed. "Maybe you thought if you used my daughter, stood at my door like this, I'd feel guilty enough to hand you a reward. Is that it?" The insult hit harder than a slap. James felt it in his bones. Years of working late shifts, swallowing disrespect, holding his head high while people spoke to him like he was beneath them, it all rushed forward in one sharp wave. His hand almost dropped the wallet then, almost, but he didn't let it. He refused to let this man push him into the dirt where he'd already decided James belonged. He drew in a slow breath, held it, let it cool the fire in his chest. "No, sir," he said quietly. "I don't need your money. I just thought no child should be left in a cab alone, and no man should sleep easy knowing his wallet is lost." For a brief second, the air shifted. Harrison's eyes flickered, like something inside him almost heard those words. Almost. Then he shook his head, anger snapping back stronger, covering whatever softness had tried to break through. He snatched the wallet from James' hand, fingers brushing his skin for the first time. The touch was quick, almost disgusted. He flipped it open, checked the inside. Cash, cards, something small hidden in a slot. All there. He exhaled, not in gratitude, but in relief that his world remained intact. "Fine," he muttered. "You did your civic duty. You can go now." Emma couldn't hold back anymore. "Daddy, stop!" she cried, stepping between them, small body shaking, voice breaking. "He helped me. I was scared, and he stayed with me, and he brought me home." "Why are you being mean?" Harrison's face twisted, frustration battling with something deeper. He looked at his daughter like she was making this harder than it needed to be. "Emma, go inside," he repeated, softer but still firm. "You don't understand." Her eyes filled, tears spilling over. "No, you don't understand. You're not even saying thank you." She turned to James, her little chest heaving. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry my daddy is like this." Those words hit both men at once, but only one reacted. Harrison's jaw tightened so hard the muscles in his neck stood out. "That's enough," he said, voice low now, dangerous. He grabbed her gently but firmly by the shoulders and guided her back. "You're going inside." She tried to look back at James, but the door was already moving, already closing. The last thing James saw was her hand reaching out. Then the door slammed shut between them with a loud, final thud that echoed in the hollow space where a simple thank you should have lived. The rain picked up again, as if the sky was offended by what it had just witnessed. James stood there for a moment on the doorstep, feeling the water soak deeper into his jacket, drip from his hair onto the smooth stone. He stared at the closed door, at the perfect mansion, at the world that had used his kindness and then slammed him out like he was nothing. He let out a slow breath. "You're welcome," he whispered to no one. No answer, no movement. The lions at the gate stared past him like he didn't even exist. He turned and walked down the steps, every footstep heavier than the last. The driveway felt longer now, colder. His taxi waited at the end like the only friend he had left. He slid into the driver's seat and just sat there for a second, hands on the wheel, eyes on the house. Why does doing the right thing feel like this? He thought. Why does it hurt more than it helps? He started the engine, the hum of the motor filling the empty space the slammed door left behind. As he drove away, the mansion grew smaller in his rearview mirror, but the feeling in his chest did not. The rain turned the road into a blur of lights and reflections, and somewhere between the mansion and the city, James made a quiet promise to himself. He would keep choosing right, even when it felt wrong, even when it hurt, even when people like Mr. Harrison looked down on him from their polished doorsteps and iron gates. Because at least one person had seen him, one small girl with tearful eyes who called him safe. He clung to that. He didn't know that the story wasn't finished, that the door he thought had closed was only the beginning, that the same little girl with the same small voice would soon say something that would turn his whole world upside down and force a proud, broken man on the other side of that gate to see him in a way he never had before. James sat in his taxi the next morning with a cup of cheap diner coffee warming his hands, the steam rising into the cold air like a tired sigh. He hadn't slept much, replaying the night over and over again, the slammed door, the trembling little girl, the insult that cut deeper than any he'd heard in years. He tried to push it aside, tried to remind himself that he did the right thing, that kindness mattered even when it wasn't appreciated. But the memory clung to him like the rain still clinging to his jacket. He leaned back, head resting against the seat, eyes half closed, letting the soft hum of early morning traffic settle around him. Then came the knock, sharp, small, urgent, the kind that sends your heart racing before your eyes even open. James sat up straight. The fog on his window made it hard to see who it was. He wiped the glass with the back of his hand, and his breath caught. There she was, Emma, standing alone in the cold morning air. No coat, no umbrella, hair damp with dew, little hands trembling as they pressed against the window, eyes wide not with fear this time, but with desperation. James threw the door open so fast the wind almost snatched it from his grip. "Emma," his voice cracked with shock. "Sweetheart, what are you doing here? Where's your father?" She didn't answer at first. She just climbed into the passenger seat like it was the only place she felt safe in the whole world. Her small shoulders shook, and when she finally spoke, it came out in a trembling whisper that hit him like a blow. "I ran away." The words froze him. He stared at her, his mind racing. "Emma, why? What happened?" She hugged her knees to her chest, trying to make herself small. "Because you're the only one who listens to me. You're the only one who doesn't yell. Daddy doesn't hear me. He doesn't see me. I tried to talk to him last night after he closed the door, but he didn't want to listen. He just got mad at me for crying. So I left." His heart twisted painfully. This was more than a misunderstanding. More than a thank you. This little girl was drowning in loneliness inside a house full of everything money could buy. James reached over gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Emma, running away is dangerous. You could have gotten hurt. Your father must be worried sick." She shook her head hard. "No, he's not. He doesn't even know I'm gone." The certainty in her voice made James go still. How long had she been gone? How distracted, how shattered did a man have to be to miss his child slipping out into the world alone? James took a slow breath, steadying himself. "Tell me what really happened, please." Her eyes filled, voice soft as she opened her heart in a way she probably never had the chance to before. "Daddy's not bad. He's just broken. Ever since Mommy died, he's not the same. He gets angry at everything, at everyone. He tries to pretend he's strong, but he's sad all the time. He keeps her picture everywhere but won't talk about her. And the wallet you brought back, it wasn't just money. My drawing was inside. The last one I gave him before Mommy went to the hospital." She wiped her nose, sniffing hard. "He keeps it because it's the only thing that makes him feel close to her." James felt the air leave his lungs. Suddenly everything made sense. The anger, the suspicion, the coldness. Grief had wrapped itself around that man's heart so tightly that he couldn't feel anything else. Pain had twisted his view of the world until even kindness looked like a threat. James' frustration faded into something softer. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. The pieces were shifting, the truth settling in. Emma kept talking, her voice barely above a whisper. "When you gave Daddy the wallet, he didn't check the money first. He checked for the drawing. I saw it in his eyes. So when he thought you took something, he wasn't thinking about cash. He was scared you took Mommy's picture. He was scared he lost her again." She paused, breath shaking. "That's why he yelled. That's why he couldn't thank you. He was hurting." The cab fell into silence, both of them sitting with the truth laid bare between them. James rubbed a hand over his face, feeling the heaviness settle deep inside. He had judged the man, Two, not for his grief, but for the walls he built around it. Emma reached out and held James's hand, her tiny fingers warm despite the cold air. "Can you take me home, please? I don't want to make Daddy more sad, but I need you with me. I need you to help him listen." Something about the way she said those words, so much hope wrapped in such a small voice, made him feel taller, stronger, like this moment was meant for him. "Of course I'll take you home," he whispered. "I'm not letting you do this alone." As he drove back toward the mansion, the air felt different from the night before. Not colder, not heavier, just full of something waiting. The driveway was still long, the gate still intimidating, but this time James didn't feel out of place. He felt like he had a purpose. The moment the taxi stopped, the front door flung open so fast it banged against the wall. Mr. Harrison burst out onto the steps, eyes wild, hair disheveled, shirt untucked. The man looked nothing like the polished businessman from last night. His fear was raw, real, human. "Emma!" he shouted, voice breaking open with panic. He ran toward them, arms outstretched, slipping on the wet stone as he rushed down. Emma stepped out of the taxi before James could open the door for her. "Daddy," she began, but her father was already kneeling, grabbing her, pulling her into his chest with desperate, shaking arms. "Don't you ever do that again," he whispered into her hair, voice cracking. I thought I lost you too." Emma held his face between her small hands, tears streaming down both their cheeks. "Daddy, listen to me. He didn't take anything. He saved me. He brought back your wallet. He brought back the picture. He tried to help." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the folded drawing James had returned the night before. "He brought back Mommy's heart." Harrison stared at the drawing. His breath hitched. His shoulders trembled. His entire body seemed to collapse inward with the truth he'd been running from. Slowly, painfully, he lifted his eyes to James, and for the first time, the judgment was gone. The suspicion was gone. The anger was gone. What remained was a man stripped down to his breaking point, seeing clearly, maybe for the first time in a long time. He swallowed hard, voice barely holding together. "I misjudged you." His words wavered in the air, heavy with regret. "I let my pain blind me. I hurt you. I hurt her." James didn't speak. He didn't need to. The moment spoke for itself. Harrison bowed his head, not out of weakness, but out of a quiet, painful acknowledgement that he had been wrong. And as the morning sun broke through the clouds for the first time since the storm began, something unspoken passed between the two men. Not forgiveness yet, not friendship, but understanding, respect waiting to be born. The beginning of something neither of them expected and both of them desperately needed. James didn't move at first. The air around him felt heavy, thick with all the words that wanted to be said but didn't know how to form themselves yet. Mr. Harrison was still kneeling beside Emma, holding her as if letting go would make the whole world collapse under his feet. The morning sun filtered through the trees, soft and golden, brushing against the stone steps. The manicured lawn, the trembling shoulders of a man who'd finally stopped running from his grief. For a long moment, nothing existed except the sound of their uneven breathing and the quiet hum of the world waking up around them. Harrison finally stood, brushing the tears from his face even though more kept falling. He looked older than he did last night, not in years, but in truth. Grief had a way of aging people from the inside out. He took Emma's hand gently, like she was made of glass, and walked toward James with slow steps. Each step seemed like it took effort, like he was forcing himself to cross a bridge he had burned with his own pride. When he reached the taxi door, he stopped, eyes lowered, voice quiet. "I owe you more than an apology," he said, the words shaking but sincere. "Last night, I saw you as a threat. Not because of anything you did, But because I didn't want to see myself. I didn't want to see how far I've fallen since my wife died. He swallowed, the pain tightening his throat. I was drowning. And when people drown, they grab onto the wrong things. Sometimes they pull the wrong people down with them. James listened quietly, hands resting lightly on the steering wheel, eyes soft but firm. He didn't say anything yet. Didn't rush him. Sometimes silence was the only kindness someone needed to gather the courage to continue. Harrison exhaled shakily. You saved my daughter. You protected her. You brought back the one thing I have left of my wife. He lifted the wallet slightly, his thumb brushing the folded drawing inside. And I repaid that with suspicion and cruelty. I judged you because it was easier than facing my own guilt. I am ashamed of that. Emma squeezed her father's hand, her small voice steadying him in ways he didn't realize he needed. Daddy, he's a good man. Harrison nodded, eyes finally lifting to meet James's, and for the first time, he didn't look at him like a stranger at his door. He looked at him like a man, a father, someone who understood struggle in ways polished floors and glass walls couldn't hide. Please, Harrison said, the words soft, almost fragile. Come inside. Let me thank you properly. James hesitated. Everything in him remembered the slammed door, the accusation, the sting of being seen as less than human. But then he looked at Emma, her trust, her hope, her little hand tugging gently at his jacket sleeve, and something inside him softened. He stepped out of the taxi and followed them up the steps. The mansion felt different in daylight, less intimidating, more hollow, like a beautiful shell with too many echoes and not enough laughter. Harrison led them into the living room, a space filled with expensive furniture, framed photos, and a silence that felt like it had been living there far too long. Harrison motioned for James to sit, but he remained standing for a moment, unsure if he belonged. Emma tugged at his hand again. Please sit. Daddy's not scary when the sun is out. Her attempt at humor made both men smile, even if just barely. James finally sat, placing his hands calmly on his knees. Harrison took the seat across from him, exhaling like he was preparing to lift a heavy weight. James, he began, almost surprised that he remembered the name from the taxi license plate. I want to make things right. I want to try. He paused, searching for the right words. I have resources, connections, a company that runs half the cars in this city. I need someone I can trust, someone who is patient, steady, good with people, good with my daughter. His voice dipped, not in pride, but in humility. I want to offer you a new position. Head driver. Full salary, insurance, benefits. You'll be home in time to help your daughter with her homework. You won't have to work doubles anymore. You won't have to worry about rent every month. James blinked, stunned. It was like being handed a new life wrapped in a single breath. Something he'd never imagined. Something he didn't even know how to react to. He leaned back slightly, shaking his head. Sir, I didn't help your daughter for a reward. I didn't bring back the wallet for money. I don't want anything for doing what was right. Harrison's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. I know. That's why you deserve it. The simplicity of that truth struck James deeply. He felt something warm spread through his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Validation. Emma climbed into his lap without hesitation, wrapping her little arms around his neck. Please say yes, she whispered. I want you here. Daddy needs you. I need you too. James swallowed, eyes stinging. He thought of his own daughter. Thought of the overdue school fees. Thought of the nights he fell asleep in the taxi between rides because going home wasn't worth the gas. Thought of the slammed doors, the disrespect, the exhaustion of always being one emergency away from losing everything. Then he thought of this moment. This child. This man trying to rebuild himself piece by piece. James lifted Emma into her father's arms gently, then stood. "I'll take the job," he said quietly, "not for the money, but for the chance to build something better for my little girl. And because he nodded toward Emma, believes in me." Harrison stood as well, extending his hand. James shook it, and this time the handshake wasn't cold or forced. It was real, firm, human. They walked together to the front gate, the same gate that separated their worlds just one night before. But today, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, washing the stone path in gold. James looked back at the mansion, then at Harrison, then at Emma, who was waving at him with the brightest smile he'd seen in years. And for the first time in a long time, James felt like life wasn't pushing him down, it was lifting him up. Harrison placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, his voice soft. "Good people," he said slowly, repeating the words Emma whispered hours earlier. "Don't just change days. They change lives." James smiled, the truth settling into him like warm light. As he turned to leave, he carried with him not just a job or a chance, but a lesson he would never forget. Sometimes the smallest act of honesty becomes the doorway to healing someone else's hidden wounds. And when you choose dignity over desperation, you don't just change your story, you change the world, one heart at a time.